In this next lesson, let's take a look at the idea of key design for your documents and also how you go about inserting a new document. So just as a touch of review, you already know this. You know that Couchbase stores key value pairs, and those keys could be something arbitrary like a timestamp, and the value could be something as simple as a temperature measurement. More likely, though, you're storing documents where you have some unique key and the value is a JSON document. Now, the document keys for Couchbase can be any string up to 250 bytes, so that's up to about 250 characters. The content, the value, the document itself, can be anything up to 20 megabytes, so that's 5 to up to 20 million characters, varying on the byte length that you're using. So how can the idea of a document key pattern be useful? Well, it's become common practice to encode document type information within the document key with this type of database. So you could have document keys where it's, for example, order colon colon some order number or product colon colon and a GUID, something of that sort, so that you can distinguish the document type while also keeping it unique. Now, it can be more involved than this because oftentimes you may use the same bucket for multiple applications because, as we discussed briefly earlier, the considerations around bucket use relate more to multi-tenancy issues than they do application and database specific issues. So you might prefix an application name as part of the key name and then have your document type and other ID values contained within it as well. Or perhaps you have the document type and you express parent-child relationship between documents. All of this is discussed further in the JSON data modeling course that's also free available here online. Now, the separators in use here, just to be clear, are merely a convention. The separators are not required or enforced. The double colon is a common convention in the Couchbase world, but it could be dashes, it could be whatever you devise. Now, one important note about this approach is that Couchbase cross-data center replication can be filtered based on key patterns. So, for example, you could identify a region within the key and use that as a sorting mechanism for dividing information up around your various data centers. And or you could also embed your document type additionally in the document itself or solely in the document itself. Let's take a look at this idea of embedding document type within the document itself. So why would you do this? Well, in a word, nickel. Here, we're demonstrating in this course putting the document type, like customer, as an attribute of the document itself. Why would you do this? Well, if you haven't looked at nickel yet, it's SQL for JSON, which means basically you already know it. Select some attributes from the bucket, where a particular attribute has a particular value, and so on and so on. It's SQL. So you could have a query like this: select usernames and emails from Customer 360, but only where the type is customer, and perhaps where the state for the embedded address is a particular value, something of that sort. Now, even cooler is that you can create indices for these particular queries so you get blazingly fast runtime performance, retrieving data shaped however you want it to be shaped. Again, if you want to know more about this, take our Intro to Nickel for SQL People course and our Intro to Data Modeling in JSON course, all free here at training.couchbase.com. So how would you go about embedding data type in a document? Well, it's code. There's a million ways to do it. The way we're modeling it here is within the data model that we're developing in the code, we're basing everything off of an entity base. And we've seen already how the .NET API controller class maps our JSON documents to their corresponding model classes based on this relationship between the controller and the model. So you previously put together this entity base, and then our customer classes derived from it. An entity base is where we set the created and updated and ID and type attribute. Here, taking the generic type from which entity base is created and taking that type value and lowercasing it, for example, and storing it as the type. And so by using generics, we get this behavior just built into the framework. So the resulting document has the document type in it, along with updated and so on. So how do you go about inserting a new document? Well, that's pretty straightforward. There's an insert method on your bucket. Now the repository, of course, might expose a create method just because CRUD is something many of us are very used to, but you just pass a key and an item to the insert method of your bucket. So that item here within the repository, you would update with the created, updated ID, and so on. Now you might also create a method, as we'll be demonstrating in the lab, to take the document type and prepend it onto a value that you then use as the key, so that the ID value is unique to the document inside the document, but the key is the ID plus a type prefix. Again, it's just one approach, but it's a pattern we're demonstrating for educational purposes in this course. Of course, once you insert the key in the item, you get back an IOperation result for the type that you're working with, and that has your success flag and so on. Now, if you try to insert the same key twice, you're going to get a document already exists exception, and that you would capture and throw that and handle it in whatever way makes most sense for your application. We don't need to demonstrate that here. But if you want to account for the fact that you could have duplicate keys, we do have a mechanism for creating auto-incrementing values and using those with keys. We'll show that in a later lesson. Now in this lab, you're going to work with this approach to document key design that we've discussed with a prepended type on the key, and then work with the insert process. Now, just to make sure you see where it is, training.couchbase.com you're already familiar with because you're taking this course. We have this Introduction to Data Modeling in JSON and Introduction to Nickel Query Language for SQL People course as well. I hope you take a look at those. In the lab itself, you're going to be building out this create method, and as part of it, you'll create a method in order to create the key pattern that we've discussed in this particular lesson. Of course, there are many different ways you could do this. Hopefully this approach is worth a bit of hands-on practice as you learn Couchbase well enough to put it to use the way you want to use it. Of course, once you create the create method, you'll also have to wire it into the controller, but as these behaviors largely relate to Microsoft technology, here you'll be posting a new document, to be creating a document, to insert it through the bucket. That's the relationship here, post to create to insert. Of course, you could use different naming conventions in your own code. When you get done with that, come on back and we're going to talk about how to update documents that already exist, all the while accounting for this customized key pattern that we're demonstrating. We'll see you then.